Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic. Welcome to the Great Reality Book Study. Um, Always excited to be in here. So I was thinking about this. One of the core messages in life that we learn in recovery is that there's a truth, an absolute truth that's beyond all concepts and beliefs, and that characteristics we call knowing, and that's to know the divine within you. And from that we know our true nature, even more important probably as our finally get to know our identity, who we are, and all those are limitless as long as we don't get stuff in front of it. Remember how we know something is only from experience, and so anything that I have to know, I got to seek. It's like Carl Jung called it spiritual conversion, and that's simply the adoption of a new belief system towards God that differs from the old one, and our old belief system, and that leads to character change. And Bill Wilson discovered a way to reach that conversion with steps 4 through 9. And that leads to the transformation spiritually, mentally, emotionally, then restores the sanity. In step 10, we practice that as a way of life. I mean, look at it like this. Just imagine you have a really stressful day. You find yourself getting mad at people. Soon you find yourself snapping at your friends and your loved ones, complaining about other people that people don't really want to hear about, pointing fingers. Rather than staying in that grouch in the brainstorm, as we call it, we do step 10. And we're going, yes, we are going to make new mistakes and have our moments. But rather than them weighing down our consciousness and let them build up on us and let them work against us, we can correct the mistake, nip it in the bud, so to speak, and move on, put it to bed. Even if you think you've been wronged in the worst way possible, you know, move on. And step 10 can be simplified as 4 through 9 daily. It's simply taking inventory of any wrongdoings, admit those wrongdoings to another, let God remove those wrongdoings, or let God do it, not you. Let God remove those wrongdoings and make amends quickly for our wrongdoings. And our wrongdoings could be a fear, could be a harm, could be a resentment. And those actions, the actions of taking 4 through 9, it strips away our ego and fosters a mindset of openness and honesty on a daily basis. And so step 10 is about being responsible for our actions. Even more important, we are doing this in the awake. And as long as we keep doing it, we'll become more awake. And step 10 is absolutely essential for ongoing recovery. And I don't like to learn the term long-term recovery because it sounds time-wise. I like ongoing. It's kind of like this. Let's say you're going to school, whether it's graduate school, whether it's an apprenticeship, whatever it is, and you go there and you bust your butt and you get to college, whatever it is. It's kind of like graduating from college and entering the working world. It's time to apply our education every day. Are you applying your education every day that you got from 4 through 9? So we'll get more into that, but I'm going to put up step 10 up here. Give me a second to, oh, I got to fix my thing. There we go. Shoot, I got to do it again. Sorry. There we go. So step 10 the most important word in step 10 is we're going to see tonight. It's kind of like the theme of the night is continued. We'll get more into that. Continue to take personal inventory. Remember that word personal inventory. It doesn't say continue to do moral inventory. It says personal inventory. And we were wrong, properly admit it. So continue is a very, very spiritual word because it means to keep doing something without stopping. To do something repeatedly. My personal favorite is to continue to keep doing something, just keep doing a specific course of action. Something that's going to make you grow. Keep doing it. There's 2 steps mentioned on this step 10. There's written step 10. The first one's personal inventory. That sounds like step 4, obviously. And when we're wrong, properly admitted it. And that could be that's 9. You know, it can also be 5, you could say, because you're admitting it to another person, but we're wrong, probably admit it. I'd like to say 9. So 4 and 9 are already mentioned here. Meaning step 10 is 4 through 9 in a single package, like I just mentioned. That we live, we breathe with every day. We don't have to try to figure things out. We don't have to worry about getting the last word and being right all the time. We're spiritually awake. We handle things differently. And when I don't handle things right, I got step 10 to fall back on. And then if I do step 10, I got step 11 to fall back on. Because it's impossible to do step 11 without doing step 10. So it tells us that we are always can recreate what happened to us in 4 through 9 the first time. And what that means is when I do 4 through 9 the first time, I have a spiritual awakening. I can recreate it. If I go to a mosque or a church or a Buddhist monastery for the first time and I have this aha moment and I have a spiritual, some type of spiritual experience, that's great. But how can I recreate it? With the steps, we know exactly how to recreate. We might be able to figure out the other way to recreate it, but the steps have it written out for us. Everything is put in front of us. Everything. As much as we want to say, let me put my own spin on this and let me do it my way. But steps 10, 11, 12 are the 3 steps of spiritual progress. Are all about repetition, all 3 of them. And the repetition means repeating the same action over and over again in order to get results. The same results. And same definition as practice, repetition. What does it say in step 12? Practice these principles in all affairs. That's talking about step 10. Continue to practice 4 through 9 in all your affairs. Think how well that can help you in the world. So let's go to page 84. And we're actually going to look at the last sentence of the 9th step promises on 84. Right before it says this stop brings it to 10. You probably noticed the only thing that separates these steps is a paragraph. There's nothing in between that says you do step 10 after you complete step 9. They're going to tell us something different. A lot of people will say that. That would take me a long time. It'd be 4 years so I started step 10 because I completed my first ninth step. All of them. But page 84, it says the last sentence, they will always materialize. Materialize means become reality in the condition if we work for them. They'll always be reality if we take action. And that thought of taking action, that mindset brings us to step 10. This thought, that thought of action. So now we're on the mindset of action, not believing or anything else, not thinking about it. Action. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory. That sounds like 4. And continue to set right any new mistakes as they go along. Continues in there twice. I'm going to point that out. Continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any mistakes. That means step 9. Continue to do it. I'm a big book traditionalist or fundamentalist, whatever you want to call it. I don't understand why people would want to make the inventory in step 10 different than step 4. Um, Everything in the book tells us, well, it tells us exactly, as we're gonna see in this paragraph, that we're doing 49 as a way of life. You know, sure, it's done with a new sense of direction. My eyes are open. When we first did 4, we're looking back at our whole life too. We're looking back at resentments, harms, and fear and sex conduct, and we have no idea what we were doing when we did step 4. We just knew that we're looking at our stuff going, holy crap. And I follow the directions of the book and with the sponsor after doing 439, we have that awakening. And by that time, I have a deeper understanding what inventory is. And I will have an even deeper more understanding of inventory in the next, coming months after that when I start sponsoring, hearing 5th steps. But step 4 inventory, it opened our eyes to see the truth. And my question is, if something opens my eyes and I see the truth, why would I want to do it differently? Why would I want to change the inventory? If it can cause a blind person to see again, hypothetically, we're once blind, now we see, then imagine what we'll do for you when your eyes are open on a daily basis when life happens around us. Again, why would I want to do it differently? This is, of course, this is just my experience. I've been doing, if you've been doing step 10 another way, I'm not trying to knock it or get you to change it. It's just to be open-minded. But there's 3 words I can't get past. It says continue twice in there, right? As I said before, continue means to doing a specific course of action. What course of action we just did? 429, right? The other 2 words that are hard to get past are personal inventory. And people will say the inventory portion of step 10 is this and step 4 is that. One's moral, one's personal. That doesn't make any sense to me. They're both the exact same. There's no difference between moral and personal inventory. So for that argument, I'm going to point something out in the book, and he calls it moral inventory 2 times in the book. Once when he's describing our steps in the 4 to 2nd edition, and on page 59 for the written 4th step, he has moral inventory because that's what it says in the actual 4th step. He calls it personal house cleaning when he says next we launch a course of personal house cleaning. So introduces that word personal. But after that, he calls it like on 64. Therefore, he started upon a personal inventory. And from 72 on, he uses it another 6 times, never referring to it as anything else. He says inventory, but he never calls it moral, only twice, 8 times personal. And of course, when it's written in step 10, continue to take personal inventory. We're wrong, promptly admit it. My point is when, if I'm taking, if I'm talking about inventory and the directions, he uses the word personal. So when they say continue to take personal inventory, he means it. Meaning we continue to use the definite example that's on 65, but when things come up. Remember what definite means? It means absolute, true, on certain, precise. Example means a model. I do inventory for like that for the last 24 years, and it works. Whenever I describe written inventory in the big book, I'm sorry, whenever he describes inventory in the big book, he's referring to the definite example on 65. Again, I can't get past the word continue. If he wanted it to be different, where is it? Where does he tell us? Oh, you can say the 12 and 12, and that just makes it more confusing. I love the 12 and 12, but some parts I don't like, to be honest with you. But it says we can do spot check inventory. That's doing inventory I've been doing it my whole life in my head, and I'm going to justify it somewhere. I don't believe in annual house cleanings once a year, or semi-annual house cleaning twice a year. Just let stuff build up. Some call it the nightly review 10th step, but it says right before the night review, this stuff brings us, we're in step 11. This is why we have big book studies like this, to point these things out to make people think. Again, I'm not trying to change the way you look at it. I'm just asking you, just look at it differently. So back to the book. We continue to take personal terms wrong properly a minute. So we vigorously commence this way of living. So we vigorously means energetically, aggressively. We vigorously commence this way of living as we clean up the past. Past means our original ninth step. He's talking about double-sided growth here. So what's double-sided growth? Double-sided growth is I'm doing my old inventory, my old amends, and making new ones as they come up. Double-sided growth. There's two sides of growth here. I'm growing from my old amends and my new stuff that that's that I stuff that comes out of my mouth, so to speak. And a big misconception about step 10 is that I mentioned a minute ago, you have to wait until we make a bunch of amends before we start. And that's a falsehood. We will be on our old amends for some time, a long time for some of us. Like I said, 4 years until I had like maybe a handful left, and I completed those. But as soon as I know how to do inventory, I can do step 10. The day I did my fifth step, I can start doing step 10. At the same time, I began doing step 11, and then of course you're starting to sponsor. You want to live in those 3 steps and making your old amends. And look at the results. Look at this promise. If I do that, if I'm doing that double-sided growth of making my old amends and my new ones, we've entered the world of the spirit. Many want this world to enter that world without doing 4-9. But I love, many of you probably know who Sandy Beach is. He passed away a few years ago. He said, anyone can enter the world of the spirit. That's also called the fellowship of the spirit. Anyone can enter the world of the spirit, but there's one condition into the world of the spirit is you have to leave your world at the door before entering. That's why we do 4-9. Leave your world at the door. You can't take your old crap into this. Some may try to understand it before they do the steps. It's impossible, to understand it until we enter that world. Also, an important qualification here is you cannot enter the world of the spirit until you realize you are spirit. And what that means is this is all about the spiritual malady. Inside of me is a spirit. It tells us on 55, the great reality is deep within us. I'm trying to move all this stuff out of the way. And so we experience that great reality within us, and know we know we're spirit. We become aware of it. Once you're aware you're spirit, you cannot enter the spirit until you realize that you have spirit or know spirit or are spirit that way. In step 10, we're experiencing God every day. What God is doing for us, we couldn't do for ourselves. Matter of fact, he's, we can never do for ourselves. Matter of fact, ourselves is out of the picture. It's just God. We're growing with God. We're just not saying, we just realize that, we're spirit. God's there, but it's like we're just following him without question. That's what they call that. There's consciousness where I know what's in front of me. I can see left to right, not just making unsound judgment and attacking people or stuff. But I'm looking, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? But there's intuition where I'm following without question. Look what he says here. Our next function is growing understanding and effectiveness. This is our function, right? Understanding means to know, comprehend something. By understanding God, I understand who I am. Effectiveness is a level which something it's successful, producing a desired, it's result, like these promises. That success is the results of doing for step 10 daily. The reason I'm doing step 10 is to what? I mentioned earlier, to grow. And lots of people call step 10 a maintenance step, which is kind of cool, but maintain is to keep something in good working condition. and to keep something the same. We're not trying to keep the same. It's a Sacramento River right by me. It's not the same water that flows up there daily. I want to be like that river. I always want to be different. I always want to keep flowing. What I ate yesterday is not keeping me full right now. And you know, maintenance step kind of waters it down a little bit. It's like, a car that's stock. It's and look, you keep it, you make all look in the night and the outside and keep it the exact same. I want to maintain my spirituality, but more importantly, I want to grow spiritually. I maintain it by growing. And spiritual growth is to always progress, develop, developing higher consciousness by continuing doing the same principles that I did before. That got you to the higher consciousness in the first place. It doesn't make sense to do it a different way. This is what it says next. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for a lifetime. He's telling us, this is not something you do when, it's not, it continues every day. It's not an overnight matter. It's not over one day. We don't graduate. What does it look like? What does a lifetime look like is a good question. It's a duration of life from being alive to death or whatever, but it's really, the duration of life that's beyond all spiritual aspects, actually. I mean, 4 through 9 are not steps I do once. It's for a lifetime. It's all about repetition, like I said earlier. So many look at step 10 as just inventory. It's 4 through 9. Let's see. So right out of the paragraph in the book here. This is why we have book study for this stuff right here. Continue. There's that word again. Continue. Continue to watch for self dishonesty, resentment, and fear. So 4 things we are aware of. If you look a few pages later in step 11, it's asks us, have I been resentful? Have I been selfish? Have I been dishonest? Or been afraid? Same questions come up again in step 11, but he's asking us to watch for them here. Remember, what you're aware of, you can work on, you can change, but we are not what will control you. If I've never done step 4, I'm still controlled by selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear because I'm not aware of them. I kind of knew when I was mad, but I didn't realize that I had, 16 pages of resentments or more, and there's 8 resentments per page. When I first did this stuff, I can work on, you can change it, but so many think we're supposed to wait rather than watch. Let me give an example. People, want to wait for stuff to happen, like all this wait for it to happen. What waiting is anticipating something will happen. It's almost like I'm a bad person, so this is going to happen to me. Watching is totally different. It's paying close attention, observing, spiritual observation with new eyes. We call that spiritual awareness. So if you look into the Tao or Buddhism, they talk about the watcher of our thoughts. For years, our mind, our ego was the watcher of our thoughts. And it was driven by the 7 pieces of self, the misdirect instinct, pride, self-esteem, personal relations, and all that. Meaning, when we used to look at our emotions, we were the watcher. When we have a spiritual awakening, the watcher becomes our higher consciousness, meaning now we're looking at them through the eyes of conscience or the eyes of God. So conscience, or we will call it conscience or God, whatever you want to call it, is the watcher. So you see through the eyes of conscience rather than the ego. Big difference. You can't have one, you can't have a little bit of the other. If I have an ego, I don't have conscience. If I have conscience, I don't have the ego. So with step 10 inventory and daily meditation, consciousness grows more and more because it goes beyond just watching our thoughts and emotions. We're watching our surrounding. We always want to see what's around us. We're more attentive on everything, like eyes around our head. Remember the teachers say I got eyes around my head? Now we do. But the more we are watching our body, our physical sensations, breathing more and stuff like that, consciousness keeps expanding. So the more I do 11, it expands even more. And that's what I mean when I say our thinking becomes one with God's thinking, fourth dimension of existence. Watching now is very powerful. So when something negative happens, I'm watching. It's now if I'm really far away from, I'll give you an example. Let's say I have a resentment against someone and I'm just frustrated. So there's 8 other people in this group, and I'm gonna go tell another 8 people about it, right? And after a while, I'm fulfilling my ego by telling people about it. I need to go home and write it down and get back into it. More negative stuff's gonna happen until I write it down. And then, but I always tell sponsees, like, to write down as much as you can on the little things, because when the big things happen, you know how to handle them. It's like maybe some guy at work is just stepping on your toes. Write it down. Because when you maybe lose that job or lose a relationship, now you know to inventory. You don't want to learn inventory through your worst stuff. So it says when these crop up, resentments, fear, all that stuff, when these crop up, not if they crop up, when they crop up means, like I said at the beginning, things will happen. So when they crop up, we ask God. That means pray. Whenever I hear the word ask God, pray. So when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. That sounds like 6 and 7. So when these come up, I ask God to remove them. Now, since I'm doing 11, whenever I pray, even like in 6 and 7 and step 10, 11's there also, because whenever I pray, I'm doing step 11. When I write something down, discuss it with another, and let God remove it, it's step 11 is there as well. And that place we can go to in 6 and 7, where we can let God remove the stuff. We can go to 11 daily. We'll talk about more about that next week. When we're at step 11. Let's see what it says. We discuss them with someone immediately. So you notice he's got 6 and 7 before 5. He's saying to bring it to God. I still do it discussing with another than doing 6 and 7, so I just do it like that. But we discuss them with someone immediately. Sounds like 5. I mean, the main reason I write it down and discuss it with another immediately means do it at once, right? It means do it now. It's interesting. For 5, he tells them immediately, and look what he says next. And make amends quickly. He didn't say make amends next week. Make amends quickly with harmony. What's quickly look like? I'm going to do something in a timely manner with little or no delay. If Jason's wife calls me up and says, "Can you call Jason quickly? I can't get a hold of him." I'm going to pick up the phone and call him quickly. I'm not going to say, "Oh, I'll do it in a couple of hours." No, quickly. And there's another part to this that many people forget as part of step 10. Once my mind's clear, and I've done all that stuff, then we resolutely, that means a strong, determined way, turn our thoughts over to someone we can help. Now, doesn't have to be another alcoholic. Not just it's not just another alcoholic. It could be anybody. The world of the spirit includes everyone. So when we get off track, we can get back on track by focusing on helping another. That could be, for me, I have sponsoring, but I also went down to the food pantries and the homeless, fed the homeless, and just help people. Went to my parents' house more. And here's another aspect of this too. Where do my feet land when I do step 10 every day? The first word says love. All we are is love inside. Love and tolerance of others is our code. Think what tolerance means. It's a big word, right? That's to love someone even if we disagree with them. Can you love people even if you disagree with them? Can love that person you see on TV every day that you're supposed to hate, or this person, that neighbor? To love all. Love and tolerance is our code. It's our standard form of behavior is what code means there. So when we strip away all this stuff, is all we are is love. In step 10, as I said, it's 4 through 9 in a single package. Except those principles, now, the way I look at them, I don't like to make it crazy. So I kind of say there's no numbers on them anymore, like 4 or 5 or 6. I just do them. They're not just principles. principles I practice in all my affairs. Add prayer meditation and sponsoring to that. I call them 8 principles for daily living. 8 principles for daily living. And it's inventory, discussing with another, letting go, making amends, turning my thoughts to someone I can help, asking prayer, meditation, listening, meditation, sponsoring. It's simple. Inventory, discussing with someone else, letting it go, make amends, turn my thoughts to someone I can help, praying, meditation, sponsoring. Simple. You do that like that, and you can't go wrong. I mean, even though I say step 10 is daily, I've learned more and more in the world of the spirit that's more like minute by minute. Blink, say when things come up, and does every day something come up? No. So like my wife, lost her job last week, and she's a breadwinner, and it's like a lot of fear came up. I wrote down about 7 or 8 fears and talked to my sponsor about it right away. I didn't want that garbage to accumulate. I need to be there for them. No need for I'm not gonna wait until the annual house cleaning. I need to do that right away, you know? Because what happens is if I sit there and I don't write down in step 10 with those fears, I'm gonna start thinking, oh, what if the house gets taken away? What if this happens? What if she doesn't get a job? All that stuff that mind F's herself. We're not here to do that anymore. If I keep my room organized every day, I don't have to look for something. I don't have to do a long cleanup every 6 weeks. Like in my office here, I try to keep as tidy as possible so I can find something. I'm not looking for my keys anymore. Well, sometimes I do, but I've witnessed firsthand people crumble in the program because they wait to do inventory when they're emotionally at the deepest of emotional distraught. When the wheels fall off is a good way to put it. You know, they don't they do it when there's a major problem or breakdown. The world's crashing around them, sinking, and that's not recovery or being recovered. That's recovering, I guess. It's still because you're still fighting something. If you examine your thoughts, if you examine your thoughts and actions when they crop up, resolve them, negative thoughts and feelings will decrease right away. You'll still have them, like I would still have them a little bit, but you have strength and faith. We bring that into the room and we overcome them. I'm going to show you guys just a quick glance of what the 10-step packet that we have looks like. If anybody wants a copy of it, but I call it step 10-11 spiritual progress workbook. I'm sure the rest of it next week, but this one has the paragraph we just read, but it's got all the steps in there, which is kind of cool. And then it's got the instincts, just like in my 4-step packet, all the instincts, the pride, high self-esteem, and all that, because we got to use that. And then the essential words of it says step 4, but it's the same words that are in it because it looks just like this. It looks just like the 4-step sheet I use. I put down the date and I write down whether it's a resentment, harm, or fear. And I put down what it is and what caused the resentment. And then I go ahead and check the boxes. So example would be the fear I had with my wife losing her job. The fear I had was we're going to run out of money. It affected the most of all with me right away, my emotional security because I was already there. But it also gave me very low self-esteem, affected my pride, and affected my material security, of course, right away. That's what caused it all. But then I checked social insecurity, and then I just look at selfish and frightened. And, I discussed it with another right away, and I asked God to remove it. There's no amends being made there. But if it's something like where I short with somebody, I'll give an example. I got feedback that some guy was really mad at me recently, and I realized, well, I didn't really do anything in my mind wrong to him, but I could have been better. And it was a flare of the moment thing where things were going fast paced and we're at a retreat. And So I wrote down, the harm. It affected my personal relations with him. It gave me low self-esteem because I didn't realize I did it. It affected my pride because other people saw as well, and then emotional, and then social insecurity, and then so I was selfish, self-seeking, and frightened. And I discussed it with another, asked guy to remove it, and I went to his house and made amends. Simple as that. And the guy was like, "Dude, don't worry about it. It's as simple as it is." Now, if what I do, if it's like a big thing and it's a lot of resentments, I draw an arrow down and I just write them all out. Very simple. You can also use a 4-step sheet, but this kind of makes it more official, if you want to say official. But that's pretty much it. I mean, the first time we do 439 is done with motivation and desperation. Why? We're trying to overcome alcoholism. Remember, it said that we'll do anything for victory over alcohol. Then it says we'll go to any lengths for have a spiritual experience. We're still there. I'm still 24 years sober, still going to any lengths to have a spiritual experience. So the difference between 4 to 9 the first time and 4 to 9 step 10 is our mindset's different. Like I said, we're awake. It's about spiritual progress, growth. Same principles, but now, like I said, we're in the world of the spirit. Um, Last week, we looked at the 9-step promises. Now we're going to look at the 10-step promises. These promises are different than the 9-step promises because they show us the grace of God, what the grace of God can accomplish. I call them kind of forgotten promises, at least in my area. There's no meeting I go to around here. Well, one meeting did it once that I actually, because I helped start it, and we did the 10-step promises rather than the 9-step promises. And one out here does the 5th-step promises, but most of them do step 9. I wish they read these promises though. Remember, so reiterating the 3rd-step promises, where we say God will provide for us if we get close and perform His work well. These are results of staying close to God. God will provide for us, right? The 5th-step promises say we will feel we're on the broad highway, walking hand in spirit universe. This is what the broad highway looks like. So these promises are about ongoing transformation and continuous freedom. It starts off with a kind of a bold statement and a bold promise and a bold result. We have cease fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. What cease means to stop, right? So we have stopped fighting anything. Now it sounds real. First of all, if we have stopped fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, does that sound like a person that's free of anger? Yes, it does. Very different from the actor we were, where we're always in collision with something or somebody. Now we stop fighting. There's 3 things he mentions about we stop fighting anything, anyone, alcohol. Not all of them, not 2 of them, all of them. I mean, not one of them, I'd say, all of them. If you're still fighting any of these, are you recovered? Now, someone might disagree and say, well, I still get angry. That's fine as long as you're aware of it and doing stuff for it. But if you're like just the dried person, like to say you're recovered, just snaps at people, but I'm recovered. If you're still fighting, am I recovered? People say I'm recovered, yet they're still fighting things. You know, how can you say you're recovered if I'm, you know, even if the obsession's gone, but I still hate people. That's not recovered. You still have enemies, voodoo dolls, so to speak. It says, by this time, sanity has returned. And this is vitally important right here because this is where step 2 actually officially happens. Sanity means silence of mind, wholeness, which means complete of the mind, body, and spirit. So, like I said, step 2 is reality. Step 2 just wanted us to believe it could happen. So, step 2 starts on page 44. What page are we on? 84. That's 40 pages of a lot of directions and a lot of work we did in between. Or where we found wholeness and the mind being, retrained away from insanity to sanity. That's why I say steps are not about learning, they're about unlearning. It's all about renewing your mind and staying one with God or one with God's will. So it's very important to know this is where step two, that, step two is just saying, if you look back at it, came to believe a power greater self restores sanity. This is where it happened. Look at this next one. We have seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as a hot flame. Like spring backwards, for like from heat, right? Recoil from it. We react sanely and normally, and we'll find this has happened automatically. This book hammers home that our mind was not normal when it came to booze, right? We know that. Now we act sanely and normally, and it says it happened automatically. Automatically is when something is done on its own, right? If the sprinklers just turn outside my house and they're not programmed, they turn on automatically. When something, so with something not done on its own, when something is corrected without thinking about it, without conscious thought, is what he's saying here, automatically. He's saying sanely, it normally happens without thought. I don't have to fake it till I make it. The things we struggle with, the things we struggle with. But we often forget about the things we're not struggling with that we used to struggle with. We beat ourselves up all the time. We sit there and say, oh, I still got resentments. But what about the resentments you don't have anymore? What about the fears you don't have anymore? The seeds finding anything just happens. All we do is did the work. Now it says we will see that our new attitude towards liquor hasn't given us any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. No thought or effort is a big thing right there, because we worked pretty hard. We did inventory. We sought God. We made amends. It's a lot of effort. I just did them, like if you do inventory, you're seeking God, making amends, like I did the other day. I mean, it takes some time, but when we do it the first time, we're overcoming the spiritual malady. And when we overcome it, we get a new attitude. So it's basically what I'm saying here is we walk in Alcoholics Anonymous for victory over alcohol. We halfway through the steps, well, around 9, we're not even thinking about alcohol anymore. We're going to any lengths for a spiritual experience. So I'm not inventorying alcohol in this. I'm not inventorying alcohol. I'm inventorying my resentments, my fears, my sex conduct, and my harms. There might be alcohol things related to it. We're not inventorying alcohol. We're working on ourselves, right? So when it says without any thought or effort on our part, he's right. But so the then bonus is we overcome it. And let's see what he says. Now, it's a nice miracle, it's a nice miracle. We see it without any thought or effort on our part. So, that is the miracle of it. We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. So miracles is this extraordinary event, unexplainable by the laws of science and nature, human intelligence especially, considered by the work of some supernatural divine. When miracles come from God. And miracles is simply a way of knowing that God's work is working in your life. The thing about miracles I always tell people is this: it's when you have them in the past, you say it's a coincidence, or it's strange, it's weird. God is everything or he's nothing. So when something happens in my life, it's always God. Right? And now when things happen, I just know it's God. I know it's God's working. And think about this for a second. Not one single one of us is not a miracle. We're sitting in a big book study on middle of the night for some people on a Friday morning. Some of us are in here. And right now, someone just OD'd. Someone just died of alcohol. Every single second, someone dies. And we're all sitting here alive. Why us? You are the miracle. And that's why it's important to keep, trudging the road to happy destiny, because you're a miracle. You look yourself in the mirror tonight, thank God. It also says we're not avoiding temptation. Temptation is something you want to do, right? Overwhelmingly want to do, even though it's something you should avoid, right? And avoiding temptation means it means we cannot go anywhere. It says not having not having avoid temptation means we can go anywhere. Avoiding temptation. If I'm avoiding temptation, I have a list of places I can't go, right? If we're not having to avoid temptation, temptation's gone. I can go anywhere I want to go. Look what he says next. We feel though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. Neutral, non-participation in a dispute. Because of step 10, I'm no longer fighting anything. You know, remember the old term silent during wartime? That's a place of neutrality. You didn't want to argue with people in our own country about whether we should do this and shoot that, or this guy's doing this wrong. A lot different than it is today. It was silent during wartime where we want to be as one. Neutrality, non-participation in dispute. When I'm neutral, I'm not giving in to resentment as much. I'm not fighting it much. You're not fighting alcohol. And here's the greatest promise of the book. We have not sworn off. I'm sorry, we have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. How many times have we sworn off alcohol? I always thought it says with or without solemn oath. But when we say sorry for good, it's not from swearing off. Instead, the problem has been removed. And that problem, he says, does not exist for us. The obsession, the reoccurring persistent idea of drinking that took you out of, sold your reasons, took away your choices, made you drink against your will, has been removed. I am recovered. Right here in the book confirms if we do 4 through 9 and apply this to our daily lives in step 10, the obsession will no longer come back. Remember in 64, there was a promise when the spiritual malady is overcome, we should not mentally and physically, meaning by having the ability to connect to God away from the spiritual malady, the obsession of blindness is gone. The allergy becomes a moot point because it's no longer being fed. And it says, we're neither cocky nor are we afraid. This is our experience. This is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. Now, think of the word react right there. How did you used to react? This is how you react now. One guy says, well, you have to buy, one guy asked me, do you have to buy into these promises? And he goes, no. And he goes, I go, why are you asking that? And he goes, because I think I got them. I'm thinking I have to tell myself I have them. And I said, no, you do have them. That's how we now react. Fit spiritual condition is the condition we are in as a result of speaking spiritual wellness. And spiritual wellness is simply seeking the spirit within, be more in touch with the spiritual dimensions of life, resulting in a new sense of purpose, direction, goals, awareness, right? When I get there. So I can talk about fit spiritual condition for a long time, but let's go to page 100 and we're going to read about what happens when we're spiritually fit. Now, this is the part of the book a lot of people don't like. Not say a lot, some. Because what it says here is it's on page 100. Assuming we're spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. So it begins with the condition, assuming we're spiritually fit, meaning you have to be in fit spiritual condition to do this stuff. That's the disclaimer here, right? When people start getting mad at me about it, book studies in person and stuff, they're telling me without saying they're not spiritually fit. You can't do this stuff. This is people have said, how many times have you heard this in the rehabs you're at? People have told us we must not go where liquor is served. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which contain drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go into their homes. We mustn't think or be reminded in alcohol at all. Look what he says here. Our experience shows this is not necessarily so. So if anyone's been to rehab, especially what they have now, you're warned about triggers or relapse prevention. Don't go back to those slippery places. Even at meetings, it's spun in the meetings in the last 40 years. Avoid, the liquor aisle in the store. Never again can you talk to old drug friends. At one rehab I went to, I had to make a list. So I had to make a list of all the people I could that who served as a trigger. Family members, friends, drinking buddies, using friends, girlfriends, coworkers, neighbors, strangers, you know. Then I make a list of places that might cause a trigger for, bars, clubs, golf courses, football games, tailgating, grocery stores, school, work, certain streets, certain parts of town, concerts, you know, the arcade, lakes, backyards, weddings, graduation parties, vacation, holidays, concerts, gambling. I was told if I want to say so, I avoid this stuff. So they're saying, go live your life in a box. That means that some guys that come by and pick me up to a meeting are going to run out of my basement and then drop me off and run back in. Now, we've been to meetings where people denounce this stuff that we're talking here because they have not, you know, all they know is modern recovery. Relapse or living sober. Look what he says. We can meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet those conditions still has an alcoholic mind. I mean, any of those things he mentioned above, we still have an alcoholic mind if I can't go those places. He's not saying go to this place. He's going to tell us that you don't go those places every day or hang out, put your feet up. He's saying we still have the obsession. There's something a matter with his spiritual status, not in fit spiritual condition, meaning not doing 10, 11, 12, not doing 9, perhaps not making amends, still in the spiritual malady. Look at this. His only chance for sobriety would be someplace like the Greenland ice cap, and even there, Eskimo might show up with a bottle or bag and ruin everything. Any woman who has sent her husband to different places on the theory he would escape the alcohol problem. If you have an obsession, relapse prevention is not going to work. Living sober doesn't work. Stay on this page, keep your hand on this page, and go back to 42 really quick. And this is going to explain my experience the best way I can. Go back to 42. Talking about relapse. I think it's in the middle of the page. Top of the page, 42. They had said that though I would raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, it just did happen and more. For what I had learned about alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. I would go to rehab for 6 months and get out and drink and go, oh, what happened to all that stuff they told me not to do? The obsession takes it away. Let's go back exactly where we were. And look what he says here. And our belief, any scheme combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. So much for triggers. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but usually winds in a bigger explosion than ever. I've seen that happen a lot. We tried to do these methods, and these attempts to do the impossible always failed. Because people ask me all the time, do triggers exist? I don't think they do, because if anyone has a trigger, what they're saying is they have still the mental obsession. Don't call it something else, call it the obsession. If you do this process, you still have triggers, there's an obsession there somewhere. And I'm a ticking time bomb. I know it from personal experience. Newcomers need to know that the allergy and obsession about the allergy obsession, and stick to that. Stick to it. Filling up you know, why do the steps if I could stay sober, but just by knowing what I'm not supposed to do? We wouldn't be sitting here on a Thursday or a Friday. So filling up a self-centered, mentally obsessed mind, unmanageable mind with the idea of having triggers makes this, book seem not true. Like you can't be recovered, like people will tell us. Back to this. So our rule is to not avoid places where there's drinking. Now here's the condition. If we have a legit reason for being there, right? Like my brother had his 60th birthday party recently in a bar. That was my legit reason for being there. I wasn't going because it was at a bar. And it says that includes bars, nightclubs, dances, wedding receptions, and even plain ordinary whoopee parties. I know, Ali likes the whoopee parties. To a person who has had experience with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting province, but it isn't. You will note that we made some important qualifications. Therefore, ask yourself on each occasion, I have any good social, business, or personal reason for going to such a place? Or am I expecting to steal some vicarious pleasure out of the atmosphere of such places? I know guys who do that, and they're not spiritually awoke, and they wind up relapsing. If your answer those questions satisfactory, you need to not apprehensive, go or stay away, whichever seems best. But but be sure you're on solid spiritual ground before you start, and your motives going to places are thoroughly good. So you have a reason for being there. Do not think of what you can. This is my favorite line in this whole thing, and I do this for everything in life. Do not think of what you will get out of an occasion. Think of what you can bring to it. But if you are shaky, you better work with an alcoholic instead. So it goes right to it. So spiritual being a fit spiritual condition, it's kind of like physical fitness. It cannot be achieved overnight or staring in a mirror or wishing to have this like perfect body. I mean, everybody wants to get well and be fit and stay strong, but no one wants to go to the gym. Everybody wants to lose weight, but not everybody wants to go on a diet. There are these people want to change, but few want to do the effort to make change happen. Everybody wants long-term recovery and wants to pick up that 10-year chip, but nobody wants to do the work to do it. It's like it's gonna happen in osmosis. We cannot just snap our fingers and make that happen. Spiritual fitness is not gained through observation, perfect planning, talking about it, reading books, good intentions. It's not achieved, it's achieved by doing spiritual activities like we're doing here. We gotta do the work. Just like when you hit a plateau in a physical workout, that plateau does not make you strong the next day. It's continuing to do the work that does. And we find that what keeps us spiritually fit a month or a year from now won't cut it. Just like like I said, you can't stay full on what I ate yesterday. I'm getting hungry now. But we can't stay fit, we can't stay spiritual fit with what we did last week or yesterday. Spiritual freedom is, I had a guy tell us years ago, freedom has no history. The freedom I have right now is the only freedom that I have that matters, not what I did yesterday. It's the freedom I have from what I did today. Spiritual life, my grandfather would say, spiritual life cannot be lived in yesterday. Maintaining spiritual fitness is we mentioned earlier, is a work of a lifetime. Daily dedication, being, continuous action, repetition, continue to perfect and enlarge our spiritual life through daily step work and helping others. The true test for anyone who's walked the spiritual path is always keep working for growth. The key is not to let up. That's just the way to look at it. The more, I work on myself. But why do I need to be in fit spiritual condition? It's what it says on page 77. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves in maximum service to God and the people about us. That's what they're talking about in fit spiritual condition on 77. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be maximum service to God. So my purpose is to stay spiritually fit so I can be maximum service to God and the people about us. all the people, right? And step 10 summed up very well on page 66. You go to 66. And it's, but with the alcoholic, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found it is fatal. From harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns, and we drink again. Well, that's the drink and is to die. Anyone in here, I'm sure, has experienced that at some point. You know, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The obsession returns, and we drink again. Early in my recovery, I met a gentleman who would mentor me. He became a huge influence on how I did the steps today. He did book studies with me, invited me to his book study, and I sat through it for a long time. Um, he was doing with my sponsor at the time. But along, with my, that sponsor, this guy was another huge influence in my life. Um, to this day, there's no one who can explain instincts like this guy could. But he taught me how to meditate. He accompanied it on some of my hardest amends. He kept me motivated. He called me out of my crap. His strong points were 10, 11, 12, and he always promoted it. But he showed me by example. And, he was the perfect example for what I wanted at that time of a cold demeanor my first 5 years of recovery, first 6 years. Where he is, where he is today, he's dead. And what happened was, for years, he was doing step 10, 11 sponsoring. And he was always had his inventory in his pocket. And when something went wrong, he wrote it down. So he was doing great, fantastic. Then he got this big resentment against over a breakup that he just didn't want to be wrong about. And step 10 went from every day to less, and to justify it. He wanted me to justify or validate his resentments. And then step 10 stopped altogether. And that calm demeanor wasn't there anymore. He became restless, irritable, and discontent. He was a different person. It was like he's fallen into darkness, and I got to witness it. With that mind full of all those uninventory resentments, he stayed sponsoring for a while, but then he got resentments against them because he had a holier than thou attitude. Ego-driven sponsorship does not work. His insanity built and built and built, and it came the day he drank. I remember him telling me the frustration of drinking again made his drinking worse. He went in and out of jail, in and out of recovery, could never find his place back again. Could never maintain it. Eventually, his heart just stopped working. I believe he died of a broken heart. He died all alone. Shouldn't have been like that. His funeral had 6 people there. I was one of them. 6. If he had died sober, there would have been 600 people there. I can honestly tell you, if he had not stopped doing 10, he'd probably come here and be part of Big Book Compendium. He'd still be one of my right-hand people. He was a real alcoholic. And 10, 11, 12 was his life support. And when he pulled that plug out of him, he died. I don't care. I say to people all the time, I don't care how much you know, how you feel. You stop doing the steps, and you're an alcoholic, you will drink again. I'm gonna close with this: Einstein said we cannot solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it, meaning we must always go deeper. And step 10, it uncovers our inner spirit to always be present. It is the process of shielding our unshielding our unwrongs and looking at them. So, like, living the spiritual way of life, we're either growing spiritually or we're declining spiritually. If I'm not moving forward in spiritual progress, I'm in spiritual regress. And if I'm in regress, I'm eventually going to return to my previous state of mind that wanted relief in the first place. And you get there, it's not easy to get back here. And the greatest thing about the steps is everything is laid out for us. Everything is laid out for us. You know, that's the most beautiful thing. Life will, let life follow it. You know, we're, when we're free of anger and fear, of things, that you don't like about yourself, free of what isn't working for you, when we shift from misdirected instincts and ego, your mind transcends limitations, away from suffering. You begin to look at life in the terms of how can I grow? How can I serve thee? You know, continue to use these principles of way of life. We're going to look a little bit more into step 10 next week as it pertains to the 11. And we're going to talk more about what it means to have permanent recovery as a result of the steps. I'm going to stop the recording.